Okay, hi lads, and welcome to the Dublin Academy of Education Junior Cert Maths Easter Revision course. My name is Carl Bryan, and I'm going to be going through the Paper 1 exam for you over the next 7 hours. So, ultimately, one of the main sets of notes that we've given you this week is this. It looks like here. This is the Dublin Academy of Education Junior Cert Maths Higher Level Easter Revision course 2020, Paper 1. And if you look at the note and the actual quote that I have on the front page, I absolutely love this. The best angle from which to approach any question is the triangle. And that is really, really important for your junior cert exam. Ultimately, what you're going to try to do is work as hard as you can over these classes with me. Work as hard as you can up to the June exam. And if you can do that, you really will get what you're actually, what you will deserve when you get your result in October. So, as I said, I'd like you to welcome to the class. A little bit strange that we have to do it online, but we're going to work through it, and we're going to make sure by the time we go through all the videos this week is that you will be really prepared to go through this Paper 1 exam. So what I'd like you to do, starting off, if you just turn to page 2, and I'll just give you a quick rundown on Paper 1. So, as you can clearly see on Paper 1, it says Paper 1 is a 2.5 hour exam, that's 150 minutes. And it'll take place on the afternoon of the first Friday of the examinations. So the examinations start on Wednesday the 3rd of June, and this Maths Paper 1 will be on Friday the 5th of June, and will go from 2 o'clock to 4:30. Now, we'll just have a quick look at what areas that we need to cover for this Paper 1 to make sure that you're actually prepared for any type of question that comes up in the exam. So Paper 1, it covers material from strand 3, 4 and 5 of the syllabus. So at this stage, you'll be aware of the different strands that we have on the actual course, and you'll know that it's from 1 to 5. Now, Paper 1 predominantly deals with strand 3, strand 4 and strand 5. So if we look through the different areas that can be examinable on those strands, if you look at strand 3, this is the number strand. And the main areas that are examined are number systems. So we've got different number systems like natural numbers, integers, rationals, irrationals and reals. We also have to know our scientific notation areas. We have to have a look at our applied measure, our applied arithmetic, indices, sets, which predominantly comes up obviously on Paper 1. It could come up in Paper 2 with a probability question as well. And then obviously every area of the strands will have some type of problem solving in it. We don't know the actual question exactly that's going to come up, but what we're going to do over the next number of videos is we're going to prepare for any type of question that can come up. Okay, so that's strand 3. We then have strand 4. Now strand 4, I cannot stress how important strand 4 is for Paper 1. Strand 4 is the algebra strand, and it is absolutely huge for Paper 1. You could have between 4 to 5 full algebra questions on Paper 1, but you could also have other areas that you could use algebra to actually answer the questions. We all know about creating equations, and Paper 1 is all about creating equations. So we can use our algebra knowledge to create equations and therefore solve equations. So algebra is so important for Paper 1. So having a really good grasp, a really good understanding of algebra will do you so much wonders for that actually Paper 1. You'll do so well if you understand algebra for that Paper 1. So the different areas of algebra that we need to know, we've got to know our linear, quadratic and exponential patterns, because patterns and sequences are involved in this actual algebra strand. We've got to be able to examine algebraic relationships. We've got to be able to look at our expressions. We've got to be able to solve equations. We've got to be able to solve inequalities and also put them on a number line. And then again, like every strand, there will be always a problem-solving element to it. And as we'll see in this handout and over the next number of videos, as we go through the different type of problem-solving questions, hopefully what we can do is we can prepare you for any type of problem-solving question that comes up in the exam on the 5th of June. The last strand then that we have to have a look at is functions. Now, the different areas that we need to know within the function syllabus is we've got to be able to graph functions, so whether it's our linear or quadratic or exponential, which was asked in 2019. We've got to be able to create linear functions, quadratic functions. We might have to have a look at cubic functions as well. And ultimately, again, we've got to be able to problem solve. Okay, so every question, or most of the questions that you get on Paper 1, there will be elements of problem solving it, and we'll be able to use different strands in order to solve those actual problems. And as I stressed, we don't know the exact type of questions that are going to come up, but if we can look at all the areas, then we'll be able to be prepared particularly well for this Paper 1. Okay, so that's page 2, and that's the different strands that were examinable on the actual Paper 1 exam. If we now go to page 3 and have a look at the different areas that we're going to look at within Paper 1, first of all we have number systems, which we're going to talk about, sets, arithmetic, taxation and interest. Algebra, which we're going to spend a lot of time doing, as again I just stressed the importance of knowing algebra very well. We'll have a look at our patterns and sequences, and we'll have a look at our functions and graphs. I suppose one thing that I really want to stress is, lads, is the importance of this handout. For you, and as you approach the exam on the June the 5th, if you can actually go through all of these questions, and if you can understand the questions and what's going on here within the actual questions that we have, you'll have no problem doing the questions in June. Ultimately, every question that has been asked beforehand is a step that you can take in order to answer any of the questions that we have within June. So if we know this is like your Bible over the next 3 months or next 2 months. If we know this inside out, well then we're going to have an absolutely brilliant chance of doing really, really well in June. And ultimately, that's what we are going to do. So what we're going to do is, over the next number of videos, is take all the areas of the strands that are examinable in paper 1. We're going to go through every type of question that may come up in paper 1. And if you understand them, and you can do the questions that are on this handout, you're going to have no problem whatsoever doing any of the questions in June. So ultimately, that's our goal. We're setting an objective for ourselves. The objective is to know that handout inside out. And if you know that handout inside out, you'll have no problem doing the exam within June. Okay, brilliant. So that's really the plan over the next number of videos that we're going to do, is blitzing that handout, ensuring that we know it extremely well. If you know it extremely well, we're going to be absolutely laughing when it comes to the exam in June. Super. Okay, so what we're going to do is, as I said, we're going to start off with our number systems. So if everybody could open up a set of notes on page 4, we've got a certain number of questions that we are going to go through on number systems. Ultimately, I suppose, starting off with our number systems, as I mentioned already, the different type of number systems that we're going to need to know is, the first one is n. So obviously, at this stage of the year, we should know that n is a natural number, and we've got to make sure that we know what a natural number is. So a natural number is a positive whole number. Got to make sure we know that, particularly when it comes to inequalities in algebra as well. The second one then we have is z, and z is an integer. And an integer is a positive or a negative whole number, which includes 0. Now, 0 is not a natural number, but 0 is an integer. So we've got to make sure that we know that. Okay, make sure we can differentiate between those two. The next one then we have is we have our rational numbers. And our rational numbers can be written as fractions. So any number that you know that can be written as a fraction, that is going to be rational. Then we have our irrational. So if the number is not rational, well then it is irrational. So rational means it can be written as a fraction, and irrational means it cannot be written as a fraction. And I often say to students that one of the easiest ways to kind of identify whether it's rational or irrational is just put it into your calculator. In most cases, when we put values into our calculator, the calculator will give us back a value as a fraction if it is possible. So we will try to do that. Now, most of these irrationals are also known as surds. So surd is a square root that kind of simplified to give a whole number. And we've got these famous irrational numbers, and I think the most famous, as you know, obviously, is pi. So pi is the most famous irrational number that we know. And we'll talk about that later on when we go into paper 2 as well. And then finally what we have is we have our reals. Now, for the purpose of our course in the Junior Cert, is that every number that we have will be a real. So if the examiner says to you, is this a real? You can instantly say yes, 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 yes. Because there's no other numbers on our actual course. Unlike at Leaving Cert level, where we have to deal with imaginary numbers within complex numbers. So for us, every number that we have will be a real. So it doesn't matter what the examiner says, it doesn't matter what the number is. If he asks you if it's a real, you'll say yes it is. Okay? Right. So having an understanding of each of these is really, really important when we come to do our number system questions. Because they will tend to go back, the examiner will tend to go back and ask you about these. Right? Now, two other, I suppose, terms that we need to kind of introduce at this stage is primes and composites. Now, again, these are terms that you should have known, or you should know at this stage, but just to kind of go through it again, a prime is a number that has two divisors, or two factors itself as one. And basically, the composite then is the opposite of a prime. So if it's not a prime, it's a composite, and if it's not a composite, it's a prime. So that's all you really need to remember about those. But that has been asked over the last number of years as well, identifying the fact that numbers are prime numbers. And you'll see when we go through these actual exam questions, it's the same type of question that comes up again and again.